Hey, Uncle Brian. Wanted to wish you a very happy birthday and wanted to share a story with you that I remember from many, many years ago. It's probably actually the first memory that I can think of having as a person. It was at 4th of July one summer. Um, I was probably 4 or 5 ish, maybe. And I remember I was standing by the lake, must have been by myself. I don't remember there being anyone else around me. And I remember taking a wrong step as I was turning around and I fell backwards into the lake. And I mean, of course, at that age, I couldn't swim. I just remember I was struggling and getting tired. And I remember sinking. And I remember looking up at the green glow of the lake above me. And I remember a hand coming in and grabbing me by the face and pulling me out. And I remember seeing your face. And after you got me in your arms, I don't really remember exactly what happened right after that, but I remember waking up in my dad's arms next to grandma and grandpa's house up up the landings in the yard there. And I've never forgotten about that. It's something that I don't think I've even ever really talked to you about, but talk to my parents about it every once in a while, and um, it's something I think about not not all the time, but still semi regularly, I guess at this point. And I want to say thank you for saving my life. I mean, I wouldn't be here. My kids wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you being there and for you doing what you did. So, um, yeah, just wanted to share that with you. Wanted to say thanks again and wanted to let you know I love you. So, happy birthday to you, Uncle Brian. See you later.
Hey Brian, it's your brother Mark. Instead of calling you up and singing you happy birthday, I thought I'd just reminisce with a couple stories from way back when that kind of introduced me to you, or and I've never forgotten them. The first one is when we were in Lawrence and we're dating our beautiful wives or whatever, the hot chicks back then or whatever. We were out all together, and the two girls, Mary and Sheila, wanted this special cocktail drink mix. I don't know, something like a Harvey Wallbanger or something goofy like that. So they sent us off to get it. And of course, we want to make sure we make these girls happy, these pretty girls happy. So we get to the store. We didn't quite know what we were looking for, but we knew it was kind of rare. And we got there back to the cooler, and there was a gal pulling the last 6 pack of this drink or Harvey Wallbanger, and we're like, what are we gonna do? And all of a sudden, I saw your eyes go like you had an idea, and the next thing you know, you looked at the gal and you said, "Hey, you don't want that. It'll make you ugly." And then she was upset, chewed him out and chewed me out. And I'm going, I'll just whiff him, And but it worked. She stuck the 6 pack back in the cooler and left, and we grabbed it and we smiled real big and we took off and hit a home run with Mary and Sheila. And so I thought, man, that guy is smart on his feet, and I'll never forget that. Then there was another time early on, way back then, and I think it was an engagement party for me and Sheila or something like that. And for some reason, Brian and I had to take Uncle Tony and Uncle Mike back home, and they were sitting in the back seat of the car, and they were talking. We were talking about stuff, and the next thing you know, they were talking about hangovers and stuff. And Brian goes, "Hey, I know I got the perfect cure for a hangover. If you shake your head real hard or whatever, it gets rid of a hangover." And the next thing you know, Tony and Mike are back there laughing, and they're just shaking their head. And I'm thinking, man, that Brian is one smart cookie. But then it got real quiet, whatever, and I looked up into the rearview mirror, and they're both out. They had concussions. There's blood coming out of their nose. I was like, what the hell are we going to do? But, they're okay. They seem to have survived it. And again, it was just another one of those memories I just, makes me think fondly of you, Brian. And so happy birthday, and hope it's a great one. See ya. Bye.
Hey Brian, I just wanted to reach out. I was thinking about this the other day, and really it was just one of the greatest days of my life. You know, the afternoon was kind of doing that lazy late summer thing, you know, kind of gold enough to make the driveway sparkle, but not bright enough to really bother anyone. You and I had decided to turn that backyard area of Grandpa Till's into a basketball court, and you know, get into a really fun game of hoop between the two of us. I mean, the hoop was the old one that he'd hung years ago. The rim was bent, the net half chewed by squirrels, backboard plastered with faded, you know, just different stickers from Ellenwood High. It was really perfect, but I just remember we cracked open a couple of Schlitzes, the cans hissing really kind of like tiny cheers, and toasted, and the kind of exaggerated clink that makes you feel like life's a little more cinematic than it really is. I remember you saying winner gets the last hot dog, and we didn't even have any hot dogs. It was just funny, and you know, we take a swig and bounce the ball and casual confidence, and only someone who shoots more trash buckets than layups can muster. And I always thought about you that day we played basketball, just the trash buckets. But we played like it was the playoffs. Cheap trash talk, ridiculous crossovers, and too loud celebratory whoops whenever one of us, you know, nailed a great layup or some sort of really good shot. At one point, I remember you pulled this desperate, theatrical behind the back move that somehow worked, and I swore I saw some sort of gust of wind come along and knock your ball into the rim under the rattling maple leaf trees, you know, that we played under. It was just greatness, just pure greatness. Halfway through the game, I just remember you pulling me aside and saying, you know, I wish that I had married Julie and not Mary. And I said, I wish I'd married Mary and not Julie. And we laughed about that for a long time. And you know, but we kept playing the game. And when the last Schlitz was gone, I just remember sitting out there on the driveway, kind of the ball between us, watching the sky from a pale blue to that syrupy orange that promises every evening. And I just remember Leroy turning on the porch light, clicked on with this soft mechanical turn as the screen door hit the house. And from somewhere inside the house, we could hear Charlotte doing dishes, and, you know, proof that the ordinary world was still there and kind of would accept us back. I just remember you saying, same time next weekend, like I was going to be back again. And we just laughed, and it just was such a great time, and just one of the greatest days. You know, small world, small times, but gosh, what a great day. Anyway, I just wanted to say, the heck with all these people that said that you wouldn't make it to 64. You did it, buddy. Happy birthday and congratulations.
Growing up, geez, a lot of crazy stuff. A lot of fun stuff, but one of the craziest when I caught you in the back of the JUCO, which was right behind our house, in that little pit, 3 concrete walls surrounding you, and you were down there with a brick smashing 22 bullets because you like to hear them go off like a firecracker. Have you ever got out of that without getting shot? I don't know, but true story. Things you try to forget, but you don't. Anyway, happy birthday, brother. Love you.
Hey Brian, happy birthday. The memory I wanted to share with you is from quite a while ago. It would have been 2 or 3 years after I graduated. I had come back to Ellenwood for a basketball game. You happened to be reffing that basketball game, and you were just blowing calls left and right. The Ellenwood fans were getting increasingly more and more upset. And ultimately it got to the point where you had to be escorted out by the Ellenwood Police Department and the Barton County Sheriff's Office for your own safety. It was wild. I'll never forget it. Anyways, happy birthday.
This reminds me, pouring this bottle of scotch, of a special weekend that just happened a few years ago. And it was a special weekend because we were kidnapping Rick Shank for his birthday. It was going to be a special weekend away at Canopolis Lake. Well, Brian and I kind of kicked it off, and he only had 3 things to do. And as I remember, things didn't quite go as planned. Brian and I borrowed a pickup from Marmy's and headed straight to the bank, and we picked up Rick, and we were test driving this pickup. That's at least what we told him. But we might have to borrow a little money, or I may have to borrow a little money to make this all work. So I told Rick he needs to ride along and see if he thinks it's a good buy or not. And so Rick hopped in, didn't even think nothing about it. And Brian's main job was to keep Rick talking the whole time and not realize what was going on. And as we drove around, we started working our way out of town, and Rick was wondering why we weren't going back to the bank. And of course, Brian kept changing the subject, trying to get him to talk about what we were looking at and all this other stuff. Anyway, before long, we were out of town, and Rick realized something was going on. So we were on our way to Canopolis Lake. Rick unknowingly didn't know what was going on. He had his dress clothes on from the bank and didn't shut his computer down and all worried about everything. Well, before you know it, we get to Canopolis Lake with a few stops in between. And Brian's second job was to help get Rick's clothes for him. We had Annie pack a suitcase of his medication and his clothes for the weekend. And Brian got a hold of the suitcase, and when we got to the lake, Rick was all dressed up and he wanted to be casual, so we gave him the suitcase. Well, Brian had taken the suitcase to the Ellenwood Theater Department in the archives down in the basement and dug up a bunch of old clothing to put in the suitcase along with his medication, and got rid of it, what clothes Annie sent with us. Now, before we know it, Rick came out of the room in a nice 1960s leisure suit, from what I remember, and it looked like crap, but that's what he wore, because that's all he had to wear. And as the evening went along, we started playing a lot of cards and having a few beers and a few drinks. And as I remember it, that was the night that Brian got introduced to Bill's 40-year-old scotch, and things got a little wound up. Well, Rick decided he wanted to dress down a little bit more, so he's going to put on his pajamas. And so he snuck into the bedroom and came out a little bit later and was wearing a nightgown that came from the Ellenwood Theater Department. So, and it was not very pretty, let's put it that way. But anyway, as the night went along, Brian was getting a little more wound up with that 40-year-old scotch, and as Bill refers to it, mother's milk. And so before we knew it, Brian disappeared, and we all knew that he had a third job to do. And so we figured out what was going on. And so all of a sudden, Rex and Jim started waving their dollar bills. And I knew what was going on, and Bill knew what was going on. And before we knew it, out of the darkness of the bedroom came a nice blonde-looking woman in the darkness. But before we knew it, stepping out into the light, we realized the blonde was Brian, and he was a lady of the night. And it was a picture that we'd like to erase from our minds, the way he looked. And let's put it that way, the scotch really kicked in, and he was having a good time dancing away the evening. So to cut a long story short, was he was supposed to be responsible for the lady of the night, and I guess he accomplished that. But he came up with the name Twilight Twiggy that night. And so here, to a belated birthday to Twilight Twiggy, a little bit of mother's milk.
Hey, old man. I know you're getting forgetful, but I remember the time we were talking about our college days, and you were talking about the school that you went to, and that your greatest regret in the world was that you attended that dang KU, because when you saw my KSU hat that was signed by Willie himself, you admitted that you really wished that you were a Wildcat all those years. I'm sorry, it's just a dream. Happy birthday.
Remember the time when Brian and I were both coaching at St. Pat's, and we were between practices, and I said, you know, my kids are really fast, and Brian says, well, my kids are fast too, and I said, well, I think my kids could beat his kids. And he goes, well, I know I could beat you. And I said, you can't beat me. So we bet who'd ever run down and back twice and win would have to wear the other team's hat and logo. Well, just so you know, happy birthday, Brian.
So Brian, Jim, and I are doing a basketball game in Hayes when all of a sudden I see Brian sprinting across the floor. And I look over into the stands, and there's a gentleman with a plate of cookies walking up the stands and runs into a lady with a baby, both dropping their precious cargo. And out of the corner of my eye, I see Brian sliding across the floor, and he saves the precious cargo with one hand. He didn't drop one cookie. Way to go, Brian. Have a happy birthday, my friend.